This video will review how to fill your negative impression, as well as how to rectify your positive model. If a thicker distal end pad is necessary, cut the negative impression, splice it back together, and use a spacer block to increase the chamber depth of the socket. This will increase the thickness of the distal pad. Create an air source through your positive model by drilling a hole in the negative impression. Cut a section of paracord and lubricate the cord with petroleum jelly. Insert the paracord through the bottom of your negative impression. Ensure you have at least 10 inches of string out of the proximal end of the model. Secure your cast in the vertical jig. Ensure that the casting reference alignment line is in the proper orientation. This will ensure that when you bond the puck molding dummy to the model, it is in a neutral alignment. The cast can also be filled in the sandbox. Make sure the pipe is in alignment with the casting reference line. Seal the bottom of the negative impression and secure the paracord to the proximal aspect of the pipe. Fill the negative impression with plaster and allow the plaster to harden. Remove the paracord by wrapping the cord around your hand and pulling upward. This air hole ensures vacuum can flow to the molding dummy during the fabrication process. At 5280, we recommend pressure casting and the associated vacuum modification techniques. Pressure casting will get you a significantly more intimate fitting socket that has contour and shape. If you choose to use standard vacuum modifications and cast techniques, this will not impair your ability to utilize 5280 vacuum products. If your pressure cast was done correctly, you should have a nice triangular shape to the model. Begin by removing all artifacts and rough spots on the positive model. Avoid removing material over bony prominences. With pressure casting, we are not looking to do a global reduction over the entire model. As with traditional vacuum modifications, maintain as much triangular shape as possible. Modify the cast by removing material in weight-bearing areas and leaving the cast intact over the bony anatomy. Avoid removing material over the tibial crest and the fibular head. Depending on how tight your negative wrap was during casting, you will most likely end up reducing your model an additional 2 to 3 plies. Rectify the patellar tendon bar area of the model. During the modification process, be sure not to round the distal aspect of the model. Keep the distal aspect of the socket as square as possible. Rounding or removing material on the anterior distal tibia will increase point pressure in the region. In the final modification stage, we will square up the anterior aspect of the socket with a buildup. Do not remove any material over the fibular head. Reduce the socket volume by approximately 2 to 3 ply, removing material in the weight-bearing areas. At this point, we have smoothed up the positive model. We have tried not to remove material over the bony prominences, as you will still need room for the skeletal anatomy in your socket, particularly the distal tibia, distal fib, and the fibular head. We have reduced the model approximately 2 to 3 ply. The volumetric reductions have primarily been in the weight-bearing areas such as the medial tibial plateau, the interosseous, and the popliteal area of the cast. Ensure that the PTB bar modification is not overly aggressive. You do not want to create an air pocket in the tubercle area. A deep PTB bar will push the patellar tendon back and create an air pocket just distal to the bar. It's okay to apply light buildups to the positive model. If there is bony anatomy you are concerned about, feel free to do a light buildup of 1/8 inch to 3/16 on the tibial crest, fibular head, or any other bony anatomy you feel should be addressed. It's important not to do aggressive buildups such that you create a pocket that the vacuum will suck the tissue into the void. It's important to consider the trim lines during the modification process. The trim lines on a vacuum socket will typically be much lower than a traditional socket. The trim lines should not gap away from the residual limb, nor should they be so high that the ceiling sleeve will bridge across the socket ears during knee flexion. Square the distal tibia region on the positive model. Adding additional plaster in this area will result in additional padding in the bottom of the socket when the distal pad is injected. Likewise, if you're modifying for an Ertl or a patient that has a wide tibia, add room for the bony anatomy. When the distal pad is injected, we will backfill this area. Apply a plaster buildup to square up the distal end of your positive model. Light buildups on the tibial crest are also acceptable. Address the fibula head and distal fibula if necessary. Build up the posterior shelf and hamstring reliefs. Smooth the positive model and define your proximal socket trim lines. At this point, our model has been rectified. So to review, we have removed all the cast artifacts. The model has been reduced approximately 2 to 3 plies, but not in the bony areas. We have not removed material from the distal tibia, distal fibula, or the fibular head areas. The distal end of the model should be squared. We did apply a buildup to square up the distal end of the model. When we inject our silicone, we will backfill the area, creating a nice soft pad for the distal tibia. We have gradual trim lines, which are lower than typical trim lines on a socket. The model has an air hole from the proximal end down through the center of the distal model. We're now ready to bond the SmartPuck dummy to our model.